Okay, so I wanted to record a video specifically for colleague version 6 clients regarding the right to consent feature. This is a follow-up video following a previous video that I recorded regarding this functionality and the development that was underway relating to that feature, and I received a lot of feedback off the back of that, namely a concern or lots of queries regarding the fact that the candidates or contacts would be taken to a web page to enter their consent status or their denial of consent also. So yeah, off the back of that, there was a lot of questions around how the use of the wording that would be used, the ability to try and tailor those web pages to maintain branding and so on and so forth. So off the back of that, we've revised the approach, and that's essentially to offer the consent options to be within the email. So it's not a case of the candidate having to be redirected to somewhere so they can advise consent. They can simply just receive an email from yourself, and within the email they'll have a yes or a no option, and they can just choose within that email. And then from there, obviously, that response is then fed back into the system as it was in the previous email, but sorry, in the previous video. What I'll do is I'll go through the workflow again now in the revised approach, and then hopefully that can help clarify the updates that we've made. If I go into a candidate record here, and again if we revisit the customs fields area, what you'll see is the 4 GDPR specific fields that are part of the right to consent option. So we've got consent given, and that's a yes no field. We've got the consent requested, and that's a date field, which is updated when you send the email requesting consent. You've got the response received date field, and that's obviously updated with the date when the response obviously comes back from the candidate or contact. And what we've added is a record ID field. Now this is an encrypted GUID, which is basically a specific ID that's encrypted, that's unique to this record and also this system. What we've added is an extra layer of security to ensure that there's essentially a high limited chance or very little chance of there being any instance where you could kind of manipulate the URL that is sent out so that you could update any other records. It's fully encrypted in terms of the GUID that's sent, so that it ensures it's only ever going to be this record that's updated by the response that comes back. So just that extra layer of security has been another element of the development we've been doing. But in terms of the workflow that's now followed, so those are obviously the fields. If I go to generate an email now from this candidate, and from the colleague tab, if I select the candidate GDPR request email template, what you can see now is that the wording has come through. That is obviously, this is quite a limited wording set. Obviously, with it being within the email, you have complete control over what wording you want to use. And obviously, this is just an email template. And again, you can obviously update the wording within the template. But what's obviously unique now is that we've got a yes and a no option. Whereas before, this was just a single link and you clicked on that to be taken to a web page. Now you have the yes and no options actually within this email. And based on these responses, obviously, it then updates the candidate or contact record. So to keep this moving, we'll give that a subject. Before we send it, we need to assign the history code of consent requested. That's so that it updates the date field against the candidate or contact record. Yeah, on doing that, we can obviously send that email. If I quickly just close that candidate down and then reopen it, we should be able to go to the custom field, scroll down, and yeah, you can see there the consent requested has been populated with today's date off the back of me sending that email. So what I'll do now is I'll go to my inbox, review the email, obviously click on that link, and then we'll return to the colleague system. So I'll go to my inbox now. Okay, so the email has come through, and as you can see here, obviously the wording is as per the email template and as per what was sent, but obviously it could have been whatever wording you saw fit. But obviously the yes and no links are within that within the email. We'll go on the side of optimism in terms of giving consent and just click yes there. And what you'll see is that the candidate is taken to just a consent given page, just confirming consent and advising that their record's been updated. So from there, obviously the candidate's job is done. They can obviously close down and forget about this moving forwards. And what we'll do now is we'll go back to the colleague system and just check on that colleague record once the web service has run through and updated the record. Okay, so we're back in the colleague system. If I open up the candidate record we were using as the example and go to the custom fields, right, so you see the consent given has been given a consent status of yes, and the response received date has also been updated as well. If I go to the history, there we go. So yeah, you can see that I've obviously used this candidate several times as an example, but obviously the key point is that the latest history record has been logged, advising that consent has been given, and also when we sent that, obviously the consent request email as well, that was logged there as well. So we have an audit trail of consent being received and obviously consent requested, and we have these fields here recording the consent status and obviously the dates associated. And again, that's just essentially as it was with the previous solution at this stage, but that's essentially the workflow complete in terms of the right to consent. So we have a few minor things to tie off relating to that feature, but the development on that functionality is essentially at its tail end in terms of unit testing and final development, and there'll be further updates shortly.